So is your job your entire identity? Because for years, that can work absolutely fine until one day it doesn't. And if the only thing that's defining you is your job title, you're only one decision, one redundancy, one restructure away from your whole life falling apart. Because when the job suddenly goes, it isn't then just about money. You're then left asking the question, who the hell am I now? And if I'm totally honest, the reason I talk about this is it's something that's caught me out more than once over the past couple of years. I want to talk about it today. So hi, if you're new here, my name's Carl and I'm in my 40s and I'm rebuilding my life after job loss. On this channel, I kind of talk honestly about starting again, building the next chapter, and just trying to document what I'm doing as I go along, because hopefully it might help someone else one day. So I think for a lot of us, we end up basing who we are on what it is we actually do. You just think about it for a minute. When you meet someone new or when you go to an event, what's normally the sort of first or second thing you ask? It's what do you do for a living? Well, I tend to find that happens quite a bit anyhow. And it's almost built into society. We ask the question, the first thing, what is it you do for a living? Think about it, even old surnames like Carpenter, Smith, Baker, my God, it's in the name. I did have more examples, but I can't think of a single one right now. But you get my drift. And I learned the hard way myself a few years back about what happens when your whole identity is tied into what you do. So back in 2020, or sort of between 2018 and 2020, I worked for a really cool airline. And I got to go all play around the world, seeing places. And I worked with some pretty cool celebrities and sports teams. And I would be lying if I said to you, it didn't become a big part of who I was. People would ask me, went out for drinks, who I'd met, what I'd been doing. I kind of liked it. It was a big part of my identity, as I say, which was great until there was a big sort of management sort of change at one point. And I think that was the start of 2018. And things turned pretty toxic over the course of a few months. And for about 2 years, between 2018 and 2020, I dealt with a lot of workplace bullying and stress. And I've mentioned about this in another video. And I stayed in that environment for about 2 years. And it's about 2020 when I had the guy be described as some kind of meltdown. And I totally burnt out. And that's because I stayed in that environment for that amount of time, thinking it was all part of who I was. I couldn't see a way out. Very much like I guess like a toxic relationship. And for the year, so what, 2020 to 2021, I was a total ghost of a man. I was like a bit of an empty shell, to be totally honest, where I kind of tried to recover, but I just didn't know who I was. And then it was August 2021, I found another job after things recovered slightly from COVID, and I got a job with a smaller operator. It wasn't quite as exciting, but it was a promotion, and I worked with a nice bunch of people. And again, it was very interesting work. And very quickly, I started to feel all right again. And that began because my identity was tied to my job, and it gave me all the purpose I needed back into that role for the next 3 years. And for 3 years, things were okay. I was always a little bit wary of what happened, but kind of call it a sticking plaster. I sort of cracked on. And then suddenly into August 2024, I was made redundant. And I'd made exactly the same mistake again. Within a few weeks, I was out of a job, questioning who the hell am I once again. And it generally felt like it wasn't just my job that went at that point. It felt like my whole world and life had kind of collapsed at the same time. And that was when I realized it wasn't just about money. It was about something, to be honest, a lot deeper. I know this isn't just me, because other blokes I've spoken to over the years have said exactly the same thing. They get absolutely blindsided and lost when that job goes. And to be frank, I think it's really important we have an awareness of it, because if we don't, things can get quite difficult very quickly, as I've learnt myself. So I think a lot of this gets programmed into us at a young age. Just think of school for a minute. It's all about passing exams, starting from a young age of sort of, primary school. Then you get into senior school, it's about doing your GCSEs, then A levels, or whatever it is you have to do nowadays. And it's all about passing through those steps, doing a good job, and keep on climbing. And before you know it, your entire self-worth is tied to achievement and someone else's approval, which is never a great place to be. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't work hard. I'd like to see my son do better than me in school. I'd like to see him go off and do what he wants to do, whether that's uni or whatever it is he wants to do later on in life. But I think what's important is there is more to life than achievement and success. We are built for more. And if we fast forward to where I am now, that's where the problems have come from. Everything tied to success and achievement means it's been a rough ride, even a rougher ride the past year, I would say, not knowing who I am. So if that's the problem, what's been the fix? Well, something I've started to do is kind of zone out a little bit and look a bit sort of deeper. And whilst this may sound a bit morbid, one of those questions is, if something was to happen to me over the next couple of years, how do I want to be remembered? What's my legacy? Because when you go that high level, it really does kind of point out what's important to you. Again, as morbid as this sounds, I don't want my funeral to be people saying, oh, he worked hard and he had a good career and this, that and the other. Because to me, that's fairly depressing. What I want to be remembered for is my son thinking I'm a good dad. My wife thinking I'm a half decent husband. Not perfect by a long shot, none of us are, but half decent. I want my mates to show up at my funeral because I matter to them and I was a part of their life. And that to me kind of feels important. And if you look at the alternative where you're remembered for being a hard worker, the horrible truth behind it, and I've actually seen this play out in real life, is that before you're even in the ground, the chances are your job will be advertised. Within a couple of years, well, not even a couple of years, within 6 months in a company, you'll be forgotten about. So if we treat that as kind of the high level stuff, I think that's where your sort of values come from, what's important to you ultimately. I think it starts pointing towards where your identity might actually sit. Then I ask myself a few other questions, slightly less morbid, shall we say. Things like, what experiences do I want to have from life? What memories do I want to create? Not someone else's memories. What are the memories that I want to create? Who are the people that genuinely matter to me? And when I started asking myself those questions and sort of writing stuff down, something shifted. My whole identity stopped being so tied to work. And I realized there was other stuff in life that is important to me. What I want to be known for, who I am, what I want to do. And that's damn sight healthier than it all be tied to a job, because your self-worth should not be taking a dive because you lost your job. Job's just a way of making money, but your self-worth needs to be tied to who you are as a person. And I think that's really important. Now, don't get me wrong, if you enjoy what you do, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the mistake comes for when it becomes everything. If your job is everything, then you're opening yourself up to a very, very big risk. And if I was to summarize who I think I am right now, well, I think I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm someone that's trying to sort their health out, I'm someone who's trying to build the next chapter of my life, I'm someone who's trying to make money, and I'm someone that generally cares about people. And I think finally, someone that just needs a bit of excitement back in my life. And that's probably right now who I am. And that probably doesn't cover everything, but it kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what I'm sort of thinking. So who are you outside of what you do? Or if you're out of work, who are you? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested to see if people have sort of found the same thing. And if it's a question you can't answer, do kind of spend some time just asking yourself the question. and almost sort of say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to think about work. Who am I? Think about all the things you do, where you show up, and kind of write them down. I think it is really important, because you'll be surprised of all the stuff you do as well as your job. So yeah, let me know below in the comments. It'd be interesting to see if it resonates with anybody. Anyhow, I'm going to wind up there, so I don't want to make this too long a video. Please like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps me out, and I'll see you for the next one. Cheers for now.